Julia Foster's Redemption. A tale of resilience and confrontation. Julia Foster stood at the precipice of her meticulously crafted life, a 32-year-old data analyst thriving in Orlando, Florida. Her modern apartment, perched in a sleek downtown high-rise, overlooked a vibrant cityscape that pulsed with opportunity. The view from her floor-to-ceiling windows, framed by the soft glow of evening lights, was a testament to her ascent, a far cry from the crumbling world of her childhood. At a top-tier tech company, she had climbed the ranks, her sharp intellect and relentless work ethic earning her a salary that once seemed unimaginable. Each promotion, each project she led, was a brick laid in the foundation of a life she had built from scratch. Yet, beneath the polished surface of her success, the scars of her past lingered, dormant, but never fully healed. One autumn evening, an unexpected knock at her door would rip those wounds open, forcing her to confront the family she thought she had left behind and unravel secrets that threatened to undo everything she had fought for. Chapter 1. A shattered beginning, Julia's story began in a modest Ohio town, where the rhythms of small-town life were punctuated by the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation at her father's diner, Foster's Greasy Spoon. At 9 years old, her world was simple but secure, anchored by her parents, David and Marie Foster. David, a wiry man with calloused hands and a warm smile, poured his soul into the diner, serving up pancakes and burgers from dawn until midnight. Marie, once a vibrant presence, had grown distant, her laughter replaced by a restless unease. Julia, with her bright eyes and boundless curiosity, sensed the shift but couldn't grasp its weight. One humid summer evening, the fracture became undeniable. Marie packed a suitcase, her movements swift and deliberate, and walked out without a word. Julia stood frozen in the doorway of their small house, clutching a stuffed rabbit, as her mother's car disappeared down the street. David, his face etched with exhaustion, later explained that Marie had fallen for another man, someone who promised a life of glamour and ease that their modest existence couldn't match. The divorce was swift, leaving David and Julia to navigate a new reality in a house that felt too big without Marie's presence. The aftermath was brutal. The diner, already a financial strain, became a lifeline that barely kept them afloat. Bills piled up, and the fridge was often bare, stocked only with day-old diner leftovers. David worked tirelessly, his hands rough from scrubbing counters and flipping burgers. But the diner's meager profits, sometimes less than $50 a day after expenses, couldn't cover their needs. Rent was perpetually late, and the threat of eviction loomed like a shadow. Julia watched her father's shoulders slump under the weight of worry, his warm voice strained as he reassured her that everything would be okay. Marie didn't just leave. She vanished. Across the state, she built a new life with her new husband, a man whose name Julia would later learn was Thomas Grant. They had a son, Caleb, Julia's half-brother, who grew up in a world of privilege that Julia could only imagine. Marie's only contact came in the form of yearly birthday cards, each one a cold, perfunctory gesture. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing okay," she'd write, her words sharp and hollow, slicing through Julia's heart. The cards piled up in a drawer, a painful reminder of abandonment. David became Julia's anchor, his love unwavering despite their struggles. He hid his exhaustion behind a smile, making time to ask about her day or help with homework at their worn kitchen table. His belief in her, that she was stronger than their circumstances, kept her going. But the void left by Marie was a constant ache. Julia would stare at old photos, wondering why she wasn't enough to make her mother stay. The questions carved a hole in her, one she buried under a fierce determination to prove her worth. Chapter 2. The Weight of Survival. By 13, Julia couldn't bear watching her father struggle alone. She took on babysitting gigs, staying up late to watch neighbors' kids while studying by flashlight. Soon, she added more jobs, stocking shelves at a corner store, cleaning houses after school, delivering newspapers before dawn. Her hands ached from scrubbing floors, her legs burned from biking miles with heavy papers, but every dollar she earned went to David for groceries or the electric bill. He protested, insisting she should be a kid, not a breadwinner, but Julia was resolute. It was her way of fighting back against the void Marie had left. School became her lifeline. Math club offered an escape, a place where equations drowned out the hurt. Julia stayed late, poring over problems, her mind finding solace in their logic. David would sit with her when he wasn't half asleep, his encouragement a quiet force. "You can do anything," he'd say, his voice steady despite the strain. Those words fueled her, even when doubt crept in. High school sharpened her resolve. Julia learned to depend on herself, saving every penny and studying harder than ever. She vowed never to need anyone the way she had needed Marie. The pain of abandonment drove her, but so did her father's unwavering support. She knew he couldn't carry them forever. She had to forge her own path, and so she did, one grueling step at a time. Chapter 3. The escape at 17. Julia's hard work paid off. Her guidance counselor, recognizing her grit, pointed her toward scholarships. She won a full ride to a state university for data analytics, a field that resonated with her love for patterns and answers. The scholarship was her escape, a chance to rewrite her future. But even with tuition covered, she was on her own for everything else: books, rent, meals. There was no safety net, just her determination. College was a relentless grind. Julia juggled multiple jobs, waiting tables at a campus diner, dodging spilled coffee while memorizing code snippets, working as an office assistant at a small law firm, sorting files and answering calls, cleaning offices late at night, her arms burning from wiping down desks. Her schedule was brutal. Up at 5 a.m., asleep past midnight, always calculating how many hours she needed to cover next month's bills. Every dollar went to essentials, with a sliver tucked away for emergencies. Exhaustion was a constant companion, but Julia pushed through, driven by a promise to herself. Her past wouldn't define her. She took extra courses, joined data science clubs, and landed a summer internship at a tech startup. The work was intense, crunching numbers for hours, but it honed her skills. By graduation, she had a degree, a stack of awards, and a job offer from a tech company in Orlando. Moving there felt like stepping into a new world, one buzzing with opportunity. Chapter 4. A new dawn. Orlando's tech scene was a fresh start. Julia started as a junior analyst, pouring everything into her work. Within 5 years, she had climbed to a senior role, leading projects and earning a salary that felt unreal compared to her childhood. Her modern apartment downtown, filled with carefully chosen furniture, was a symbol of her triumph. Colleagues respected her, and friends became her chosen family. She thought she had closed the door on her past, proving she didn't need Marie. But Julia never forgot her father. Once her income stabilized, she sent him $500 a month, helping him pay off diner debts and fix its leaky roof. Later, she covered car repairs and bought him a new fridge when his broke. David protested, but Julia insisted. It was her way of thanking him for his sacrifices. His voice would crack with pride during their calls, calling her his greatest achievement. Those moments meant more than any promotion. Marie, however, remained a distant shadow. Her yearly cards continued, each one a cold reminder of her absence. The pain lingered, a quiet undercurrent beneath Julia's success. She had built a life she was proud of, but some wounds refused to heal. Chapter 5. The past returns. One autumn evening, a sharp knock on Julia's apartment door shattered her routine. She opened it to find Marie standing there, her smile wide but unfamiliar, with Caleb, Julia's half-brother, slouched beside her. It had been over 2 decades since Julia had seen her mother, and the sight hit like a wave, part shock, part ache. Marie stepped forward, arms open, her voice dripping with rehearsed warmth. "Julia, my sweet girl, it's been too long," she said, pulling Julia into a hug she didn't return. Caleb barely looked up, muttering a half-hearted greeting, his eyes glued to his phone. They sat in Julia's living room, the space she had made her own now feeling foreign. Marie's eyes darted around, lingering on the sleek furniture and the view of Orlando's skyline. She started with small talk, claiming she'd missed Julia, but her words felt hollow. Then she got to the point. "I I heard you're doing so well, she said, her tone shifting. A big job. Good money. She leaned closer, her smile tightening. Caleb's starting college soon. His tuition, $60,000, and we need your help. Just $3,000 a month to keep us afloat. Julia froze, the numbers staggering, but it was Marie's casual entitlement that stung most. Caleb looked up, smirking. Nice place, but it's kind of small for someone making bank like you, he said, sprawling across her couch, his sneakers on her coffee table. You could do better, he added, his tone dripping with disdain. The arrogance, the calculated warmth, it was too much. Julia's stomach churned with anger and disbelief. This wasn't a reunion. It was a transaction. Marie painted a picture of struggle, claiming she and Caleb were barely getting by. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but her eyes were sharp, watching Julia's every reaction. She mentioned Julia's job again, dropping hints about her salary as if she'd done her homework. Family helps family, right? She said. The word family hit like a slap. Where was she when Julia and David were scraping by? When Julia worked nights to afford groceries? Part of Julia wanted to believe her, to see this as a chance to mend things. She had spent years wondering what it would be like to have Marie back, to hear her explain why she left. But doubt gnawed at her. Marie's sudden appearance, her focus on Julia's income, it felt too convenient. Caleb's attitude didn't help. He interrupted to complain about his crappy dorm, saying he deserved a better car. His entitlement mirrored Marie's, making Julia's skin crawl. She kept her voice steady, asking how they found her. Marie waved it off, saying she'd heard things through old friends. The vagueness set off alarms. Julia said she'd need time to think. $60,000 wasn't something she could just hand over. Marie's smile faltered, and Caleb scoffed, muttering about her being stingy. They left soon after, Marie promising to call, her hug lingering too long. Julia closed the door, her heart pounding. Torn between anger and a flicker of hope, she hated herself for feeling. Chapter 6. Seeking Clarity. The next morning, a text from Marie reignited the turmoil. Julia agreed to meet them at a busy Orlando cafe, hoping for clarity. The place was packed, the hum of conversations blending with the clink of coffee cups. She spotted them at a corner table. Marie with her practiced smile, Caleb slouched with his phone. Her stomach knotted as she sat down, their presence pulling her back to a past she'd fought to escape. Julia wanted answers, maybe even a connection, but their eyes betrayed their intentions. Marie started with a soft tone, her words dripping with fake warmth. Julia, I've missed you so much, she said, reaching for Julia's hand. Julia pulled back, her guard up. Marie launched into a story about why she'd been gone, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. Your dad made it impossible for me to stay in touch, she claimed. He shut me out, kept you from me. I tried, Julia, I really did. The lies hit hard, twisting the truth Julia knew too well. David had begged Marie to stay in touch, but she had chosen to disappear. Julia's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let Marie rewrite history. But the flicker of hope lingered, a dangerous pull toward a family she had never truly had. Chapter 7. Unraveling secrets. Over the next few weeks, Julia dug deeper. She contacted old family friends, piecing together how Marie had found her. A former colleague of David's had mentioned Julia's success in passing, and Marie had latched onto it, tracking her down through social media and mutual contacts. The realization stung. Marie hadn't sought her out for love, but for leverage. Julia also learned more about Caleb's life. He had grown up in a comfortable suburb, attending private schools and summer camps, while Julia and David struggled to survive. Marie's sob story of financial hardship didn't add up. Public records showed her husband's business was stable. Their house paid off. The $60,000 for Caleb's tuition was real, but their demand seemed more about greed than necessity. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Julia arranged a final meeting, this time on her terms, at a quiet park near her apartment. She needed closure, not just for herself, but for the little girl who had once waited for her mother to return. Marie and Caleb arrived, their expressions a mix of expectation and impatience. Julia stood tall, her voice steady. "I've thought about your request," she said, looking directly at Marie. "But I need to know why you really came back. After all these years, why now?" Marie's smile faltered, her rehearsed warmth crumbling. She stammered, repeating her story of struggle, but Julia cut her off. "I know about your life, Mom, the house, the business. You didn't come for family. You came for money." Caleb rolled his eyes, muttering about her being selfish, but Julia ignored him. She turned to Marie, her voice softening but firm. "You left me when I needed you most. Dad and I built a life without you. I won't let you take what I've earned to fix your choices." Marie's face hardened, her mask slipping. "You owe me," she snapped. "I'm your mother." The words cut, but Julia stood her ground. "You stopped being my mother the day you walked out," she said. "I don't owe you anything." Caleb stormed off, cursing under his breath, and Marie followed, her parting words laced with venom. "You'll regret this, Julia." But as they walked away, Julia felt a weight lift. The confrontation hadn't healed her wounds, but it had given her clarity. She had fought for her life, her success, and she wouldn't let anyone, not even her mother, take that away. Chapter 9. Reclaiming her peace. In the weeks that followed, Julia leaned on her chosen family, her friends, her colleagues, and most importantly, David. She called him, recounting the encounter, and his voice, warm and steady, reminded her of her strength. "You did the right thing, kiddo," he said. "You've always been stronger than you know." Julia threw herself back into her work, leading a major project that earned her another promotion. She doubled the monthly payments to David, helping him finally retire from the diner. She also started therapy, confronting the lingering pain of her mother's abandonment. It wasn't easy, but each session helped her reclaim a piece of herself. Marie sent one last card, this time with no words, just her signature. Julia didn't keep it. She tossed it into the trash, along with the weight of her mother's expectations. The past would always be part of her, but it no longer defined her. Chapter 10. A Life Forged in Resilience. Julia stood on her balcony, the Orlando skyline glittering before her. At 32, she had built a life that was hers, earned through grit, sacrifice, and an unyielding belief in herself. The knock on her door had tested her, but it had also shown her how far she had come. She was no longer the girl waiting for a mother who wouldn't return. She was Julia Foster, a woman who had turned pain into power, betrayal into strength. As she looked out at the city, she thought of her father, her friends, and the future she was still building. The past had come knocking, but Julia had answered on her terms. And in that moment, she knew, no matter what came next, she was ready. Julia Foster's Redemption, A Tale of Resilience and Confrontation, Part 2. Julia Foster's life, a testament to grit and determination, had been meticulously built from the ashes of a fractured childhood. At 32, she stood as a senior data analyst in Orlando, Florida, her modern apartment a symbol of her triumph over a past marked by abandonment and struggle. Her father, David Foster, had been her unwavering anchor, his sacrifices fueling her drive to succeed. Yet, the sudden reappearance of her mother, Marie Stone, and her entitled half-brother, Caleb Grant, had shattered the peace she had fought so hard to create. Their demands for money, $60,000 for Caleb's college tuition, a luxury car, a new phone, were not just financial, but a calculated assault on the life Julia had built. As their confrontation at a bustling Orlando cafe escalated, Julia faced a choice: succumb to their manipulation or stand firm in the strength she had forged. What followed would test her resolve, unravel hidden betrayals, and lead her to redefine family on her own terms. Chapter 11. The Cafe Confrontation. The air in the Orlando cafe was thick with the hum of conversation and the clink of coffee cups. But for Julia, the world narrowed to the corner table where Marie and Caleb sat. Marie's smile was a practiced mask, her voice dripping with a warmth that felt rehearsed. Caleb, slouched with his phone in hand, barely acknowledged her presence. Julia's stomach knotted as she took her seat, the weight of their earlier visit to her apartment still heavy on her mind. She had come seeking clarity, perhaps even a flicker of genuine connection, but their eyes betrayed their true intentions. Marie launched into her narrative, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. "Julia, I've missed you so much," she said, reaching for Julia's hand. Julia pulled back, her guard firmly in place. Marie's story was a carefully woven tapestry of half-truths. She claimed David had made it impossible for her to stay in touch, shutting her out and keeping Julia from her. "I tried, Julia. I really did," she said, her eyes wide with feigned sadness. The lies stung sharper now than when Julia was a child, each word twisting the truth she knew too well. David had begged Marie to stay connected, to call or visit, but she had chosen her new life with Thomas Grant over them. Julia stayed silent, letting Marie talk, her anger simmering beneath a calm exterior. Marie painted herself as a victim, claiming she had struggled since the divorce, barely scraping by. "Caleb's future is at stake," she said, her tone shifting to urgency. "We need your help to get him through college." Before Julia could respond, Caleb chimed in, his voice smug. "Yeah, I need a car to get around campus," he said, not even looking up. "Something nice like a Mustang, and a new phone. This one's trash." His demands were absurd, a $30,000 car and a $1,000 phone, as if Julia owed him a lifestyle she had never had. Julia clenched her coffee cup, her anger rising. "You're asking for a car and a phone on top of the $60,000? She said, her voice steady but sharp. Caleb rolled his eyes. "You're loaded, Julia. What's the big deal?" He snapped, tossing his phone on the table. Marie jumped in, her tone pleading. "We're family, Julia. You've got so much now. Can't you share a little?" The word family hit like a slap, echoing their earlier demands in her apartment. But now, the desperation in Marie's voice felt more calculated, more manipulative. "I worked for everything I have," Julia said, her voice firm. "Dad and I had nothing after you left. I'm not a bank." Marie's face hardened, her mask slipping. "You're so selfish," she spat. "I gave you life, and this is how you repay me." The accusation cut deep, stirring old wounds, but Julia refused to be manipulated. Caleb scoffed, muttering, "Figures you'd be like this. Dad was right about you." The jab implied that Thomas Grant had filled Caleb's head with lies about her, further fueling her resolve. The argument escalated quickly. Marie raised her voice, blaming Julia for her absence. "If you'd reached out, things could have been different," she said, her eyes flashing with anger. Julia shot back, her heart pounding with years of pent-up hurt. "You left when I was 9. You sent cards, not calls. Don't put this on me." The cafe grew quiet, eyes turning toward them, but Julia didn't care. She stood, her chair scraping the floor. "I'm done here," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I don't owe you anything." Marie grabbed her arm, her grip tight. "You'll regret this, Julia," she hissed, her face twisted with frustration. Julia pulled away, walking out without looking back, their voices fading behind her. Her chest ached with a mix of fury and grief. She had wanted to believe Marie might have changed, but she was the same, using Julia just as she had used David. Caleb's entitlement only made it worse. As she stepped into the cool autumn air, Julia felt the weight of her decision settle over her. She would not let them unravel her life. Chapter 12. An Unwelcome Return. That afternoon, Julia's attempt to refocus on work was interrupted by the shrill buzz of her apartment intercom. She opened the door to find Marie and Caleb standing there, uninvited, their presence a violation of the boundaries she had tried to set. Marie's smile was tighter than before, her eyes darting nervously. Caleb leaned against the wall, scrolling his phone, his expression bored but expectant. Julia's pulse quickened. After the blowout at the cafe, she hadn't expected them back so soon. "We just want to talk," Marie said, her voice overly sweet. But Julia felt a chill. Against her better judgment, she let them in, hoping to avoid another public scene. They sat on her couch, Marie clutching her purse, Caleb sprawling out like he owned the place. Julia stayed near the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching them closely. Marie started with small talk, asking about Julia's job, but her questions were too pointed. How much she earned, how she managed her money. Then she pivoted, her tone sharp. "You're doing so well, Julia," she said. "Why can't you help us? Caleb deserves a chance." Caleb nodded, muttering, "Yeah, it's not like you're broke." Their insistence felt like a trap, and Julia's unease grew. She stepped away to grab water, leaving them briefly. When she returned, Caleb was at her desk, her laptop screen glowing. Her heart sank. He was clicking through her browser, her banking app open. "What are you doing?" she snapped, rushing over. Caleb shrugged, unfazed. "Just checking it out," he said, smirking. Marie jumped in, her voice defensive. "We were just curious, Julia. You've got so much. Why hide it?" The words confirmed Julia's worst fears. They were after her accounts. She yanked the laptop away, her hands shaking. "You don't touch my stuff," she said, her voice low but firm. She checked the screen. Her financial dashboard had been opened, multiple login attempts logged. Her mind raced to Marie's earlier hints about her income. Opening her email, Julia's heart pounded as she saw a forwarded message from David's account, detailing her job and salary, sent to Marie's address. Marie had hacked David's email, exploiting his trust to dig into Julia's life. "You hacked Dad's email," Julia demanded, turning to Marie. Her mother's face paled, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she lashed out. "Your dad's a failure, Julia," she spat. "Running that pathetic diner, dragging you down with him. I had to know how you turned out so well." The venom in her words tore into David, the man who had raised Julia alone. Caleb snickered, adding, "Yeah, he's a loser. You're better than that." Their cruelty ignited something in Julia. She stepped toward them, her voice steady despite her rage. "Get out, or I'm calling the police," she said, holding up her phone. Marie's eyes widened, her composure cracking. "You'd call the cops on your own mother?" she hissed, standing up. Caleb scoffed, tossing his phone on the couch. "Chill, it's not that serious," he said, but his voice wavered. Julia didn't back down. "You broke into Dad's email and tried to access my accounts." "That's serious enough," she said, dialing 911 but not hitting call. Marie grabbed Caleb's arm, pulling him toward the door. "You're making a mistake, Julia," she warned, her voice cold. "We're not done." They stormed out, leaving the air heavy with tension. Julia locked the door, her hands trembling, and sat at her laptop. The logs confirmed multiple failed login attempts, and a browser tab opened to her bank's password reset page. Her training as a data analyst had made her meticulous. She knew they had been digging for financial details. Marie's hack of David's email was not just a violation. It was proof she had never cared about them. Only what she could take. Chapter 13. Seeking Truth. The weight of Marie's betrayal settled over Julia, a mix of fury and grief. She needed to know how far her mother had gone. She called David, her hands still shaking. His voice, warm but tired, answered on the second ring. She hated adding to his burdens, but she had to tell him about Marie's actions, hacking his email, lying about him, and attempting to access her accounts. "She's been lying about you." "Dad," Julia said, her voice tight with anger. David sighed, unsurprised. "That's Marie," he said quietly. She always twisted things to suit her. He confirmed his email had been compromised. Someone had changed his password weeks ago. The violation of his trust crushed Julia, but it hardened her resolve to protect them both. The next day, Julia contacted her lawyer, Mark Sullivan, a sharp, methodical attorney who didn't mince words. "This is serious, Julia," he said, reviewing her evidence. Screenshots of login attempts, the forwarded email from David's account. They filed for a restraining order at the Orlando courthouse, citing Marie's unauthorized access and Caleb's complicity. The process was grueling, with endless paperwork and hearings, but Mark guided her through. Within weeks, the court granted a permanent restraining order, barring Marie and Caleb from contacting Julia or approaching her home. The judge's ruling felt like a legal shield. A weight lifted from her shoulders. Days later, Julia received a bank notification. Someone had attempted to transfer $10,000 from her savings, blocked by two-factor authentication. She knew it was Marie, still scheming despite the order. Julia's robust security measures, a product of her data analytics expertise, had protected her accounts. The failure gave her grim satisfaction, but it also left her hollow. Marie wasn't just after money. She wanted to unravel everything Julia had built. Julia reported the attempt to Mark, who filed a follow-up with the court, ensuring Marie would face consequences if she tried again. Chapter 14. The fallout a year later, Julia's life had transformed. Word of Marie's actions spread through her social circle, and the truth began to unravel her carefully crafted facade. Aunt Ruth Stone, Marie's older sister, reached out to Julia, her voice heavy with regret. "Marie's been like this since we were kids," Ruth said, sharing stories of Marie's manipulations, lying to family, borrowing money she never repaid. Ruth's honesty helped Julia see that Marie's betrayal wasn't personal. It was simply who she was. The revelation was both painful and liberating, freeing Julia from the guilt she had carried for not being enough. Marie and Caleb, meanwhile, burned bridges wherever they went. Friends and relatives, tired of their lies and entitlement, cut them off. They moved to a smaller town, their social circle shrinking to nothing, a fitting consequence for their greed. Julia, however, was building something new. Inspired by her journey, she founded a small charity in Orlando, funneling part of her income to support children from struggling families. The fund offered scholarships and mentorship, the kind of support Julia had craved as a child. Launching it felt like giving back to the girl she had been, scraping by in Ohio. Her friend Kara, a social worker, helped set up the charity, her enthusiasm infectious. Nina, a fellow analyst, designed the website, and Ryan, Julia's neighbor, spread the word through his community network. Their support reminded Julia she wasn't alone. Through it all, David remained her anchor. She welcomed him to her apartment often, watching him light up at the life she had built. Kara, Nina, and Ryan became her chosen family, people who showed up without expecting anything in return, who celebrated her wins and listened when she faltered. Buckard Chapter 15. Redefining Family. Julia also began seeing Dr. Ellen Brooks, a therapist recommended by a colleague. Dr. Brooks was patient and insightful, helping Julia unpack the trauma of Marie's abandonment and recent betrayals. "You've carried her choices too long," Dr. Brooks said in one session, her voice calm but firm. Through months of work, Julia learned to let go of the guilt she had felt for not being enough for her mother. She realized Marie's absence was her failure, not Julia's. Those sessions brought clarity, a path to healing without letting Marie define her. One evening, over dinner with Kara, Nina, and Ryan, Julia had a revelation. As they laughed and shared stories, she realized that family wasn't about blood. It was about the people who chose you, who respected you, who stayed. David had always been that for her, and now she had others who filled that role. Marie's final card arrived a few months later, blank except for her signature. Julia tossed it in the trash, along with the weight of her mother's expectations. Chapter 16. A new horizon standing on her balcony. The Orlando skyline glittering before her, Julia felt a profound sense of peace. At 32, she had built a life that was hers, earned through sacrifice, resilience, and an unyielding belief in herself. Marie's intrusion had tested her, but it had also shown her the strength of her convictions. She was no longer the girl waiting for a mother who wouldn't return. She was Julia Foster, a woman who had turned pain into power, betrayal into purpose. Her charity was growing, helping kids like her younger self find their footing. David, now retired from the diner, visited often, his pride in her a constant source of warmth. Her chosen family, Kara, Nina, Ryan, filled her life with laughter and support. The past had come knocking, but Julia had answered on her terms, emerging stronger than ever. As she looked out at the city, Julia knew that no matter what came next, she was ready. Her story wasn't just about surviving betrayal. It was about building a family that mattered, a legacy that would outlast the pain. To anyone listening to her story, Julia had a simple message. Family is what you make it, not what you're born into. Choose people who lift you up, who see your worth, and never let the past steal your future.